What's happening, friends? Welcome to another live edition of Syracuse Sports. This is Syracuse football postgame presented by Crouse Health, the official healthcare partner for Syracuse Athletics. You got Brent Dax here. You got Chris Carlson here after Syracuse takes down Colgate at the JMA Wireless Dome. Final score of 66-24. A game in which Syracuse quarterback Steve Angeli becomes the first SU quarterback in program history with back-to-back 400-yard games. Angeli finishes 24 of 32, 417 yards with 5 passing touchdowns, which ties a program mark, 6 total touchdowns for Steve Angeli, which puts him in a category with Jim Brown and Eric Dungy, who have also done that. Chris, the mighty Zach Mahoney, has 7 for the program lead in that 76-61 epic back in 2016 when the mighty Nathan Peterman led Pittsburgh to victory over Captain Mahoney and Syracuse. What a game that was. What a game that was. So we didn't quite get there on the score, but 66 points and a record-setting performance from Steve Angeli all around. So there were some numbers to behold in this one.
Yeah, Jeff Nixon's good, right? I mean, I think that's what I've learned.
Good coach.
Good coach. The fact that he could go from McCord to Angeli, and like the offense is still about spreading it around and finding the open guy and taking what the defense gives you. And I'm pretty confident this offense is going to score points for the most part against most opponents this year. Like I think they will. Certainly as long as they can protect the quarterback, they will. But
that's a big if.
Feel good about the offense, though.
The offense as a whole.
It's hard not to when you watch a team score 66 points.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, I don't care who you're playing. You score 66 points. There's talent in that room. You're deep at receiver. The running game took a hit today as we learned that Malachi James is injured. His dad posting on social media that if he has the same injury, as he put it, as before, he could be out for the year. So we'll see where that goes. Malachi, of course, a speedster, one of the fastest players in college football. We knew Usain Willis was out for this game. Devin Grant out for this game. We'll see what their status is. I think both of those guys will be back for the start of ACC play and Clemson. So we're going to get into the quarterbacks. We're going to get in some numbers and some plays that need to be recognized in this game, no matter who the opponent was, particularly Darrell Gill out there, pulling a Randy Moss in this game, which was a great play. But I got to be honest with you, Chris, as I was watching this game today, I wasn't thinking about the team that had the word Colgate. I was thinking of another team that starts with C, and that's Clemson, who Syracuse is playing next week, because you are on opposite ends of the spectrum here when it comes to what Colgate's going to bring to the table. And they had 408 yards of offense tonight. We need to get into some of the shortcomings of the defense. But what Clemson will do. Some of the throws that Steve Angeli made. What would happen if that was Clemson? Some of the pressure that Colgate was able to get on Steve Angeli. What if that, that's my whole thought process tonight. What if that was Clemson? Syracuse needed this game. They needed a get-right game. They needed to put it in their heads that they can do this. As we'll get into, Ricky Collins did not have a great start, but he recovered from that. And a lot of guys just had to bank this, right, going into ACC play, that they can get on the field and make plays. But I was looking at this game through the lens of, in 1 week, everything is going to drastically change. And you're in ACC play against, we'll see what happens in that Georgia Tech Clemson game tomorrow, Chris, but going to be a whole different world next Saturday for this team.
Yeah, going to a place that they've never won. They've lost all 5 games there. A team that, Syracuse looked out-talented to me in the opener, and they are facing a team in Clemson that's similar to Tennessee in terms of like the talent that we're going to see on the field. Certainly a team that has a great defensive line and is going to probably pressure Steve Angeli with 4, if I had to guess. Like, it's hard to imagine they're not going to get pressure on him. So, yeah, I hear you. I'm going to start positive, but there were a couple of plays that I want to bring up that were just like, that I had the same reaction. Like, what if that's Cade Klubnik and Clemson skill position players running around?
Yeah, for sure. And there were a lot of positives in this game. So let's go through some and give the shout outs here. We mentioned Angeli, surgical, went out there 24 of 32, 417 yards, 5 touchdowns, putting the ball where it needed to be, made some great throws. Darrell Gill made some great catches tonight. He had A total tonight of 6 catches, 152 yards, and 2 touchdowns, which I believe all of that came in the first half, if I'm not mistaken. So a great night for him. They got to spread the wealth a little bit with the receivers. Jalen Hornsby standing out. He had a couple drops tonight, but still 4 catches for 56 yards. He gets in the end zone. Great to see Darian Williams, the local product from CBA, 3 catches for 72 yards on the night. He gets in the end zone. Gabe Daniels gets in the end zone. Justice Ross Simmons did score. He only had 1 catch for 26 yards. Fran Brown, by the way, saying after the game, because JRS missed a lot of the game, it just turns out it's a finger issue, which for a wide receiver, that's kind of a big deal. You know, you don't want somebody catching the ball with banged up fingers, but he will be on the field. All indications seem to be against Clemson next week. So there were some offensive standouts and some pops, but man, Chris, Darrell Gill doing that Randy Moss impression. What a play. What a catch. If you guys haven't seen it, I'm sure you have if you watch the game, but if you haven't, seek it out. And I don't care who you're playing. If that's a Colgate cornerback, certainly if you can do that against Clemson, good for you. But that shows you what that receiver room's capable of and how Gill is really emerging as a leader in that room. It was a great play. It was the highlight of the night.
Yeah, I mean, I led my game story with it, and it was sort of just like, you know, and this is always the case when it's Syracuse Clemson, but like to me, it epitomized like the game in that Syracuse had a 6'3" guy who could have gone to college on a track scholarship, and to be either both a sprinter and a jumper, a high jumper and a triple jumper, 6'3", like I said, and you know, Colgate had a 5'10" corner on him, and he just like went over the guy and just took the ball out of his hands, and like. That's what happens when Syracuse plays Colgate, right? One team is bigger, one team is better, and that's just the situation. Like you said, tremendous catch no matter who it is. I mean, you know, anytime you moss a guy, you celebrate that. And I was thinking, boy, as you were listing off all those wide receivers, it's like, can we trade? Can we trade? Like we got a lot of Syracuse has a lot of depth of wide receiver here. like, can they trade?
Yeah, I mean, we've got the transfer portal. Why can't we have in-season trades in college football like that? We know why they can't, obviously. But hey, if we're getting more and more like professional football every day, why not make a few trades in that department? So they went deep on the roster. I think there was 52 guys on the field by the time we got to halftime, and that number grew. First quarter. Yeah, that's right. First quarter. Our friend Tyler Cady coming by to say, hey, I don't know if you guys find this interesting, but 52 guys were on the field in the first quarter. I said, I find that very interesting, as a matter of fact. Another thing that I love these kind of stats, and we kind of had the anticipation this was going to happen because Fran hinted at it in his press conference. Demetres Samuel Jr. plays wide receiver for the first time, makes a catch. He made an interception, and he returned a punt in this game. We had the trifecta, which I don't believe we've seen a player do that in a Syracuse uniform. I checked with Syracuse on that. We're trying to see if that's the case. Now, the name that comes to mind right away, and I'm sure it did for you, Chris, is Diamond Ferry. Yep. Diamond Ferry, 2004, had this epic game in a big win over Boston College. He had 141 yards rushing. He had 2 rushing touchdowns. He had a pick 6. He returned a couple of punts in that game. What he did not do is catch a ball. It's the only thing he didn't do in that game. So Demetres Samuel is showing he's got a little bit of that in him, and he played Colgate, you might as well do it. But he's showing, I mean, that receiver room is deep, but he can contribute there. Do you need somebody on special teams? He can do that. As Steve Angeli put it, dude, you should be in high school right now. You should be a senior right now. And Fran did it again tonight. We heard about Jamie Tremble. Didn't happen against UConn. Got out there tonight, had a sack. He wanted him on the defensive side of the ball. So Fran's just at the point, Chris, where he's like, I'm going to get you on the field one way or the other. And I think ultimately that sends a message to recruits that you're going to play. It may not be exactly where you think right away, but we're going to get you on the field if you have that level of talent in our eyes.
Two of the plays that Fran reacted the most like excitedly to. One was the Jamie Tremble sack. You know, his first sack as a college player. And Fran said afterwards, like, I think he can be a first-round linebacker. You know, first-round NFL pick as a linebacker, which is like, maybe we won't see him go back to tight end. Maybe he is going to stick there. I know my assumption had always been that he'd go back to tight end after the season, but maybe not. And then Demetres Samuel in the first quarter, Colgate tried a double pass, and it was resembled sort of a little bit what UConn did to them, right? Where the double pass worked for the touchdown, but Demetres sort of stuck with his guy down the field, and just, the play didn't work. And Fran was so excited for Demetres coming off the field on that play. Now whether that's just, hey, you're a 17-year-old and you figured it out, or like, we drilled this after last week, after we got burned, and I'm proud of you guys for learning. Don't quite know why Fran was so excited about that, but both of those plays for both of those young guys, he was pretty pumped up for.
Yeah, that was exciting stuff for sure, and that's what you want to see in this Colgate game. One thing we anticipated seeing a lot of in this game, and we kind of got there, maybe just not on the path we thought, Chris, was Ricky Collins.
We saw some Ricky. Yep.
We saw some Ricky. We solved the puzzle of who's quarterback 3. I had heard some good things about Luke Carney. I had heard from some sources that he was QB3. You never want to see QB3 unless it's against Colgate, right? Because that means it's a 66-24 game where you can manage to get the third quarterback out there. So Luke Carney comes on the field because Ricky Collins gets tackled. His helmet comes off, so he has to come off the field for a play. And Luke Carney runs for a 9-yard touchdown. And, Chris, that's what I had heard about Luke when he had the opportunities. He's one of the fastest guys on the team, and they were using him in that manner. And when the opportunities are there, they want to get him on the field, get him a little taste, right? Will he end up redshirting? I would say that's a strong possibility, right?
You would hope. You would
hope,
right?
Yeah.
Like you would hope. Like, it's best for probably Luke's development to. I know that there's a thought that maybe we're going to go to 5 years of eligibility, so maybe it doesn't matter. But Syracuse certainly doesn't want to go 3 deep very often,
No.
and Luke should probably save the year just in case they don't go to 5 years of eligibility. I would think that would be the ideal scenario. I would think.
So that came on a drive when Ricky led the team down the field, 7 plays, 93 yards, touchdown. He had a great scramble. He had a nice fade to Daniels in the corner of the end zone. All was well, but he had to make up for it, Chris, because the first time Ricky was on the field, rough start. He completes a pass to Hornsby. Second play, he throws to the sideline. Nobody there, miscommunication, whatever the case may be, but they just threw it to the turf monster. Then he lofts an interception to Daniels. And you say, well, that's not good. But then on the next drive, Steve Angeli is back on the field. And as Fran put it in postgame, he talked to both Collins and Angeli on the sideline. Says, you're a winner, but I need Steve to go back on the field with the 1s and score. And then you're going to take the 2s down and score, which is what happened. Steve scored. Ricky scored. I think we come out of this feeling a lot better about Ricky as the backup quarterback, and he showed why he's the backup, because I heard he had threw more interceptions in camp. The plays that made the competition close were some of what we saw on the field tonight, Chris. He had that 15-yard scramble. He's mobile. He can take off and run with the ball, but Steve is clearly the quarterback, more in command of the offense, and fits into what Jeff Nixon wants to do, as you noted earlier, a lot better. So, boy, you had to feel good for Ricky Collins, honestly, because that would have been rough if he got 1 series against Colgate, and it was that one rough series. He got to make up for it, and I think you feel a little better about your backup quarterback after that situation. But, boy, you had to take a couple lumps to get there for sure.
Fran wasn't too clear afterwards when we asked him why. He put Steve in there, but I've got to think it was just like Colgate had scored touchdowns on 2 straight possessions at that point. Like, Syracuse had just thrown a pick. Like, we are not leaving this game like playing poorly, right? Colgate wasn't going to catch them, but we want to leave this game playing well. So, Steve, you got to go back in there and sort of right the ship and just sort of steady things and get us playing the way we want to play exiting this thing. That's sort of what I took away from that. And there were a couple guys, I thought this was interesting, both Darrell Gill and Dan Villari. I'm sure this isn't rare among teams, but I've never heard it. And to have 2 guys say it, I thought was pretty unique. Both of them were we were disappointed we didn't finish better because we wanted the young guys to play.
Yeah.
We wanted those guys to have a chance to play. And I'm sure a lot of teams think that, but to have both guys say it, that's sort of cool, that everybody's sort of in line and thinking the same way and caring about the younger players like that. I don't know. I've never heard it before. I've never heard it stated quite so plainly.
Yeah, there was a good line from Fran in his press conference, too, because they did manage to get some younger guys in there in the running back room. Tyreek Hill had a couple of nice bursts, couple of good runs. He runs off the field, and as Fran put it, what the freak are you doing? And Tyreek's like, I need my other guys to eat. Like, even a young guy wanted some of the, like, he knew, like, this is my chance for my boys to get on the field there. So it was cool to say that and to see that. And ultimately,
culture-wise, I know, I never know if we make too much of it or not, but like, those are good things, right?
Yes.
Like that is a team that is pulling together. That is given the schedule they have ahead, that is a team that hopefully stays together, and they will need to.
That's genuine. I think that's genuine. I think this team does have a strong culture, and they do root for each other. Fran was mentioning Ricky and Steve watch film together all the time. They're boys, and they better be, because look, that's a lonely mountaintop you sit on as a quarterback, and only quarterbacks understand certain things about that position. They need each other to back each other up, and we saw 3 of them get on the field and 3 of them score tonight, which you would hope against Colgate. But Chris, here comes the portion of the show where we say, hey guys, that was Colgate?
Yeah.
Defensively in particular. Colgate put up 408 yards of total offense in this game, 301 through the air, over 100 yards on the ground. They switch quarterbacks. They go from Osborne to Sterney. Look, we knew coming into this game that Trayvon Saunders is a great player. 11 catches, 105 yards. He did not get into the end zone. But, I mean, that guy could play for Syracuse. Speaking of trades, like, can they trade for him at some point? Is he going to be in the portal? Because he can play for Syracuse. He can play at the next level. He is that good. What we didn't see coming was Reed Swanson out there. My guy, 7 catches, 110 yards, gets in the end zone twice. Great game for him. Great moment for him. But Colgate just had too many plays, Chris, even against the twos. They ripped off a 44-yard touchdown run by Fulton. And you say to yourself, man, this was an opportunity for the defense to lock it down here and feel as good as they can be going into Clemson. And look, you can look at this one of 2 ways. Colgate had 408 total yards. They had 139 at halftime.
Yep.
Right? So whatever you want to take away from that. But I still saw some things, over pursuing on the pass rush, still some angles and some missed tackles and some things. Like, did they sharpen those things up enough to level up and play at Clemson? Because you miss those things against Clemson. And again, we'll see how Clemson and Georgia Tech pans out on Saturday. If anything, Georgia Tech could be doing Syracuse a major favor in that Georgia Tech wants to play a tough, physical, get in the trenches kind of game. And Syracuse could be playing a beat-up Clemson team next week. But that's still Clemson. That's got a bunch of NFL prospects on the defensive line. Klubnik, there's still a really good quarterback in there somewhere, right? So the way Syracuse's defense is playing, Chris, overall, and the issues they're having, man, think of how they're going to have to level up to compete and control that game next week in Death Valley. They have to take a major step forward.
I was a little surprised. Fran did sort of brush off the defense's struggles a little bit, sort of as like the young guys. To your point, right? 21 of the 24 points were in the second half. Most of the yardage was in the second half. Syracuse did go very deep into its bench and use a lot of guys. And so Fran did sort of brush off, the defense struggling late. The type of play that worries me, right? I've talked a lot about like Syracuse got 2 sacks against Colgate. That's not great. The pass rush hasn't been great all year. And there were a couple blitzes that Elijah Robinson called. He got Davian Kerr free, and he got Brahim Long free. Free runs at the quarterback. And like both missed. Like they did not make the play. Elijah called a play that worked. Like it got them free to the quarterback, but like they didn't bring the quarterback down. They didn't even touch the quarterback. The quarterback just dodged them. And it's like, what happens again? To your point, what happens against Clemson?
Yeah.
Right? When Cade Klubnik dodges that and either he's off running or he's thrown to a Clemson skill guy, what happens? That is probably a touchdown. both of those plays, or at least huge gains. And on the plus side, those are young guys. They can learn. It's a matter of breaking down and making the tackle correctly. But can you fix it in a week? Can you instill those fundamentals in a week with young guys? That, I don't know.
And to flip that
is worrisome.
That is worrisome, and this is worrisome to me as well. Let's flip that around on the offensive side of the ball. There has been a pattern so far in all three games that opposing defenses are finding something pre-snap that is allowing them free reign to the quarterback. Now, some of these are delayed passes, and you kind of let the defense come in, and I get that. But if it's something pre-snap or it's just a flat-out missed assignment, there were way too many times tonight, and Colgate did not pile up defensive numbers here, Chris. I don't even think I'm going to double-check myself here while we're talking about it. No, they did not record a sack, right? But Steve Angeli took some hits after the throw. Steve Angeli was under pressure a little bit more than you want from Colgate. You want your offensive line to dominate the interior. And I don't think we can say fairly they did that. I think they controlled the game, but they didn't dominate there. Well, you got Clemson coming in. That's, as I mentioned, I don't think I really need to sell you on Clemson, but this particular Clemson defense has a lot of NFL prospects on it. Right?
Their defensive line is great.
They're great. It's one of the best defensive lines in college football. We'll see how it plays out in the field. On paper, they're great. And if you are seeing Colgate and UConn and, of course, Tennessee getting free reign at the quarterback the way that they are, again, think of the level up, the offensive line, which is a little still banged up right now. Travion Mack is still hurt. They mixed in Josh Miller tonight. I thought Byron Washington, to give some kudos to the offensive line, had a great game. And it's good that he was getting reps. Fran was talking about how important it is to get him real reps, first quarter reps, and that the team is, will come around when players like him are coming around. He's very complimentary of the freshmen like that. I think that's a strategy on Fran's part. But, boy, that is going to be a big wake-up call against that Clemson defensive line. Because this offensive line, to me, again, watching this game through the prism of, is that Clemson? I'd be worried. I would be worried. And you mentioned how good of a coach Jeff Nixon is, and I agree with that. Can Jeff Nixon do what he wants to do against that Clemson defense? Is going to be a big point of focus early, not only early in that game, but all week long. How do you do that? How do you manage to do that? Up the tempo, up the timing, and get Steve Angeli comfortable against that defense?
Yeah, along those lines, and it must have changed. Like I was surprised. It did not feel like Syracuse ran the ball very well at all to me against Colgate.
They didn't. And a couple big runs from Will Nixon, but by and large, they did not run the ball well.
So they averaged 4.9 yards per rush for the game, and I'm not sure how. I'm not sure where those yards were coming from, because I had the same reaction. I was like, this line is getting no push against Colgate. What is going to happen against Clemson? These are the types of games where if you're a really good team, like really good, if you're powerhouse good, if you're Oregon, if you're Ohio State, if you're Texas, you're running for 250 or 300 yards. Mm-hmm. And Fran was asked afterwards about balance and if he was disappointed that they had to throw as much as they did to beat Colgate. And he sort of said that they took what the offense, or they took what the defense gave them. I don't know. I think Ohio State, Oregon, I think powerhouses do what they want against Colgate, and Syracuse had to do what it took to win the game.
Well, Willis didn't play. It seemed precautionary. He was on the sideline. He looked okay. He was happy and dabbing up teammates, and didn't see, no crutches or boots or scooters or anything, which would be a sign of anything serious. Nothing that looked bad.
Yep.
And what we have said, and what it appears to be, and he's got a chance to prove it, is Willis is one of those guys you could put on the field, and he can challenge some of those better physical defenses with his style of play, which has to be balanced by Nixon, who's more bouncy, who can catch passes out of the backfield. He's your speed back, but he did not establish the line of scrimmage against Colgate. So how are you going to do that against Clemson next week? That's going to be a major question to keep an eye on there, with a running back room that's getting thinner by the day. But again, it appears Willis will be back next week. But if Malachi James's dad is to be believed, we might not see him the rest of the year. Now, that wasn't 100%. He just referenced an old injury. If it's the same thing, it could be out for the year. But not that James was in the mix to begin with. Willis and Nixon are the main guys there, and some of the younger guys got some burn out there tonight, but you got to run the football, and they couldn't run the football against Colgate the way you should, even missing those guys. I think that's a good point on your part, Chris. Any lingering thoughts before we depart for the evening here? And I'm going to read some comments from our Syracuse Sports Insiders coming up here. I mean, let's go, man. It's ACC week. It's Clemson week. Here we go. Like, ready or not, we're diving into conference play here, and I don't feel like this team is ready for conference play, but here it is knocking on the door.
Yeah, I just sort of like this. I think they played a little bit better, but the same worries have lingered now for 3 weeks, and I'm still worried about them going into Clemson. So I'll let you discuss with the loyalists.
Chris, thank you for staying up late with us here and hopping on the pod. More to come from Chris, from Javon and company. Our friend Justin was helping us out in the press box as well, and he's got a great story coming on the Darian Williamson angle and the local angle here. We got you covered on this one here, and of course, here on the pod. Thank you, sir.
4 reporters. Nobody's going to do it like that. Nobody's going to do it like that.
Come on, baby. We got you covered from all angles there.
Put a little extra in my paycheck this week, but nobody's going to do it like that.
Have yourself a great weekend, Chris. Thanks, man.
All right.
There he goes, Chris Carlson, ladies and gentlemen. Good stuff from him. And, of course, read his work on syracuse.com. And we always appreciate him hopping on the pod. And we appreciate you, our Syracuse Sports Insiders, with your terrific insight. You were texting throughout the game, and being a Syracuse Sports Insider means just that, guys. You get direct text message access to me anytime. Your opinions were flowing during the game, and we saved some of the best here for our post-game comments. And only Syracuse Sports Insiders get their voice heard on this post-game show and the Syracuse Sports Podcast as well. So let's jump right in. My guy Joe is going to lead us off today. It says Syracuse dominated the scoreboard, but not on the defensive or offensive line. That will be trouble as the season moves along to tougher and tougher teams. And that's my big concern with Clemson. You can't beat Clemson unless you can win in the trenches. And this team has not looked in any of its 3 games dominant in the trenches in any way, shape, or form. Tennessee, it's the first game, and you're kind of, it's been a whole off season, and everybody's just trying to get their feet on the ground. But physically, Syracuse recovered in that game after a bad first quarter, but Tennessee was clearly the more physical team. They did not push around UConn to the extent that you think they should. And I give Jim Mora credit, the way he's coached that team. They're as physical as they get. They've got some players on that squad. They've put a lot of offensive linemen in the NFL in recent years, but at no point did I feel like Syracuse dominated in the trenches the way they should have. They came back in that game. They showed a lot of grit and a lot of heart and a lot of things that you need in college football to win games. There was a lot of positives that came out of that UConn game, but then tonight, same thing with Colgate. They did not dominate Colgate physically in the trenches that you feel like a team like this should. And even in the second half, I feel like Syracuse's second team should be pushing around Colgate's first team a little bit more than that. That is a concern when you go to Death Valley and play Clemson, right? You have to win in the trenches. And right now, this does not look like a team that's stacked up to do that. That is a big, big concern, particularly Syracuse's offensive line against Clemson's defensive line. From Jeff A., who I got to hang out with today, big shout out to the Fine Mess Tailgate. Got to see a lot of our insiders there. What a spread they put on, man. That is incredible. Shout out to Texan Mark, his jambalaya. A lot of great food there. But Texan Mark's jambalaya. What a birthday present for Uncle Brent to go down there and hang with those guys, have some jambalaya. I wish I could have had some adult beverages. I had to work. They've got their own beer now from Myers Creek, which is incredible. Fine Mess Tailgate, man. They do it right. And stay tuned on that. And our insiders will be kept up to date with this. We're going to have some insider meetups and some other tailgates coming up at future home games. So we will give you the details on that coming up. But shout out to the Fine Mess. Had a ball down there. Met a lot of great fans, a lot of great people. People you only see online or you see in the text line. It was great to put some faces with the names. And I was hanging out with my guy Jeff a lot today. I said lots of positives to take away from today, but still concerned about the running game. I know we didn't have the first stringers in there, but based on size differential alone, you would think our line should have been able to open up bigger holes. From Andy K., who says, my worry from this game is the defense still couldn't stop a team when we needed to. This worries me for next week and beyond. I really wonder how Coach Brown is going to try and fix this. From Jack, says the offense looked great. I still have very big concerns about the defense. Missed tackles, wide open receivers, two really big issues. They got bailed out by some drops out there. The thing with Jack that you mentioned that I want to harp on for a second here is that, the missed tackles. The receivers, they dropped a few. You had a wide rotation of receivers getting in there. By and large, that's a talented receiver room. I'm not very worried about them. This offense can score, right? And it's kind of what Andy K referred to, and some of our insiders were talking about here, just that size differential, right? But it harpens to, like, how do you calibrate your expectation here about what kind of season this would be? I think most people figured Clemson's going to be a loss, right? Now, Fran Brown would cringe if we just kind of concede a game like that, but I feel like in best case scenarios for this year, keeping it realistic, what kind of roster this is, all things considered, most people have Clemson as a loss. Now, Clemson, again, we're doing this pod before they play Georgia Tech. That is a huge truth serum type game because Clemson's had some issues this year, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. There's been some I was talking to David Hale right here on this pod, who made some great points about Clemson. Maybe they were a little overhyped to begin the season. How could you not with all those defensive prospects on that side of the ball? But Klubnik just has not been the guy that led Clemson into the playoffs last year. But he's a good quarterback. It could come together like that. And in a game like Georgia Tech, ACC game, it's on the line. Like, you get a challenge from the team that's trying to knock you off the perch, and Georgia Tech is fully capable of winning the ACC. That's actually my predicted ACC championship game, Clemson against Georgia Tech. You hope that Clemson Georgia Tech knocks them around a little bit. And by the way, Syracuse has to go to Georgia Tech in October, so we're not rooting too hard for Georgia Tech in this sense. But for Syracuse's sake, if Georgia Tech can drag Clemson into the mud pit and have them be affected by that coming into next week's game, all the better for Syracuse. But if you don't have the horses, and in this case, the hippos and the elephants, as a former Syracuse coach used to say, to run for 4 quarters on the road in a place they've never won, a lot of what we're talking about is not going to matter. If you can't match up in the trenches with that team, it's going to be hard to find other ways to win. This offense can score points, but the defense is showing the leaks and the signs that it has so far. Even when you get some key guys back, this defense has not shown through 3 games that they can lock it down, that they can shut it down, that they can make those plays, that they can. Last year was a bend but don't break defense too. They haven't even done that. To a certain extent they have. Don't get me wrong. They did it against UConn, and I've seen them make plays when they need to, but it's by no means a defense I think you can rely on right now. If this team's going to win these type of games, they're just going to outscore you. Sounds familiar, right? That's kind of what this team was last year as well, but with the circumstances and the dials tuned a little different in that case. From Jason, says, glad to see Ricky Collins came out and looked better than that first possession, but it's hard to see how the competition was that close in the offseason. Look, Steve ended up being the quarterback. Ricky was the better athlete. That's the quarterback competition. Ricky threw more, not just interceptions, had more turnovers in general. We saw that tonight. He had more of those type of throws in camp. But see, that's the thing, it's camp. There's no preseason games in camp. You had scrimmages are the closest thing you get to it. So the competition does look close. But then when you get on the field in real time, which Angeli had to do in a big time and road environment, air quotes, neutral environment against Tennessee and Atlanta, but he's had that experience. He's played in a college football playoff game. He can handle himself there. Second game, you get it in the skids against UConn. You're down by 11 points in the fourth quarter. He pulls it out. First Syracuse quarterback ever with back-to-back 400-yard passing games. Even Kyle McCord didn't do that in that record-setting season last year. Dungy never did that. Go through all the names. Never had back-to-back 400-yard passing days. Now, that's UConn and Colgate, so you can haggle with that all you want. That's still pretty darn impressive. So that's why Steve Angeli, and we saw it tonight, Ricky recovered, and I'm glad he did, and I think people will feel a lot better about him if he has to come in as the backup, right? But that first drive was a disaster. So I'm glad he got the opportunity to make up for that later. But now we saw tonight firmly why it's peanut butter peanut butter and jelly time. Because he won the quarterback job. Ricky is probably the better athlete and does certain things better, but Steve is the better quarterback. I think that's clear at this point, right? Not that competition was ongoing, but I think one thing I didn't expect to learn from Colgate, but I did, that's no longer a competition. Steve is the quarterback unequivocally, and the only way he's going to lose that job, I think, I could be wrong about this, but I feel pretty confident in saying this. The only way he would lose that job, and knock on wood, we don't want this to happen, but if he did, unfortunately, get injured. From Lacey, good to hear from Lacey. Hope Brian, there's no way Brian's awake this late at night. No way. No way. Brian's listening later. But Lacey, great to hear from you again. She says, this team looks more put together than the one that I watched the last 2 weeks, but they are not ACC ready. She notes, I watched NC State and Wake Forest last night and said, this isn't great football, but Syracuse isn't even ready for this. This seems to be developing into a learning year, which is a good comment to end on, because I guess it depends on what you calibrated your expectations to be. If you agree with Lacey, and this is the kind of year where it's like, hey man, just win 6 games, learn some things, figure it out, just get through the schedule, and let's look to 2026 as a year probably more realistic to get back to what they were last year. If that's your mind frame, then you're going to go into these type of games, take a deep breath, and take those lessons from it. But if you're somebody that's like, screw that, every year's a year where I want to win as many games as possible. Yeah, the schedule's tough, but welcome to college football. That's the way it panned out. This is the team they put together. We're in the portal era. We're in the NIL era. You're putting freshmen on the field that are talented and have shown they belong on the field. Delorier, Demetres Samuel, younger guys like Tremble, one way or the other, right, that get their opportunity, and some of them are making the most of it. If you're just somebody like, I don't care. No. We're going to win as many games as possible. This is going to be the game, and we're certainly going to talk about it all week leading up to it, but I'm going to use this again. I said it a few minutes ago. This is going to be a major dose of truth serum. Where Syracuse truly is this year and what kind of year it can be and how they can navigate some tough games. And by the way, Duke in the Dome, not going to be easy. They go to SMU. You guys know the schedule. You don't need me to repeat it to you again. But this was, I think, literally the only break left on the schedule. So what we say about these games are they're get-right games. And I think in some ways they did, but I think it still left a lot of questions unanswered. And I think Chris put it well. In 3 games, we're still asking ourselves a lot of the same questions. So Clemson is going to be a major dose of truth serum coming up next week. So don't you forget, we're going to be doing our Syracuse football postgame shows all year long after every Syracuse football game. We thank you for staying up late tonight after this Friday night matchup here. We got the whole weekend coming up now, college football, NFL on Sunday, and we're just in that rhythm, baby. It is football season. So keep it here and make sure you subscribe if you're on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. So if you don't want to stay up until 1:15 in the morning, which I certainly understand, watching our post-game show, you can watch and listen on demand when you want. We've had some great guests on the Syracuse Sports Podcast recently. That's a great way to keep up with the pod. Make sure you subscribe so you can listen and watch on demand when you want. Thanks to our Syracuse Sports Insiders for your great texts throughout the game, your great questions and comments that we just read off here on the pod, and you get your voice heard exclusively here on the Syracuse Sports Podcast. Sign up today. You can tell it's 1 a.m, right? Sign up today to be a Syracuse Sports Insider. It's just $3.99 a month, but you can try it free for 2 weeks and check it out and see what it's all about. All right, so Syracuse wins. Syracuse is 2-1. A lot of great things that came out of this game, but the truth serum awaits. Let's see what Clemson brings, and we'll be all over that on syracuse.com, here on the pod, and on the Syracuse Sports Insider text line, leading into the start of ACC play. That's a noon game on Saturday, September 20th. We'll be right here with our Syracuse football postgame show presented by Crouse Health after that game. Thanks for tuning in for this postgame show, friends. You enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thanks for hanging with us here, and we will talk to you next time on Syracuse football postgame, presented by Crouse Health.